Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to cover the topic of taking care of your feet while you're on hikes and backpacking trips, etc. Very important topic, lots of points to cover, so let's get right into it. So really, let's start off by asking the context of this. What really are your goals when it comes to your feet? Something important to think through because it's going to kind of guide the way you prepare and the things that you think about. So really you want to keep your feet dry, comfortable, and blister free. Sort of the main things there. Dry should be pretty obvious because when they get wet you get blisters easy and you get problems and your skin gets kind of scrunchy and creates problems. You want to be comfortable, self-explanatory, because when you're not comfortable you're spending a lot of time focusing elsewhere, and blisters are kind of an extension of that, but they're a very common problem. So you want to make sure that we deal with those items. So the main goals for your feet, again, keep them dry, keep them warm, keep them comfortable and protected. I'm going to keep that as part of comfortable, because protected is something you don't always think fully through, but people think, well, maybe they want to have fashion and stuff like that, but protection is extremely important. Being free from blisters and safe from debris and rocks and prickly bushes and things like that. So let's sort of get into some of the points that we're going to cover now. All right, so the first point that I wanted to cover are ways that people get blisters. So just some things to think about, because blisters are a big showstopper. Just helped a guy here who is doing section H of the Great Divide Trail, starting at Kakwa, making their way up to, I guess, Canuso Falls in Tumbler Ridge, and they're hoping to go even further than that, but basically section H, the Great Divide route. And blisters were something that hindered at least part of his trip. Anyways, ways that people get blisters: getting wet feet. Could be from water, water crossing, from rain, water on the vegetation. It could be from sweat. Maybe your shoes are not breathing so well, or maybe too many layers of socks, or whatever, breathability issues, or it's just very hot out. Maybe you're moving too fast. If you're running down a long descent as a trail runner or whatever. Could be you have too tight or too loose fitting shoes. Both of those things are a problem. They create hot spots in areas like your heel, your Achilles heel, maybe your toes, things like that. Over tightened snowshoe straps or shoelaces, not tightened enough or over tightened. Both of those things are problematic, and I've experienced all of that. Another thing is long distance hiking creates hot spots. So you're going on a very long day, and it creates a lot of friction in certain areas of your feet, and everyone has different issues with that. Could be a long, extended, steep climb or descent. You're on a pretty steep slope, and you're either climbing up or down, and the way that you do that, the strategy that you use, the speed that you're going, those all add up to potentially creating a problem with blisters. You need to ensure that all the debris is removed from your shoes, your socks, even between your toes, like on your feet, regularly. When you put your feet back on, when you cross over creek, and you put all your foot gear back on, if you're swapping into water crossing shoes, if you're airing out your feet at camp, right? You need to make sure when you get everything back packaged together that you don't have debris in there that's rubbing against your feet or your socks or whatever. How you climb and how you descend those slopes or rock hoppings, things like that, the angle that you put your feet on, all of those things add up to create blisters and create a problem for you. So those are just sort of a few things that we have noticed over the years that do contribute to blisters. I'm sure there's lots of other things. But another one of those things, but I kind of want to focus on it specifically, is your toenails. Toenails are a critical thing to manage when you're going on these longer trips. Of course, all the things I mentioned in this video will change over time as your feet sort of adapt and get tougher and whatnot. Some of these things will apply more or less. It'll change over time, so just be aware of that. But toenails are very important. You need to cut your toenails back. When you're on slopes and even when you're rock hopping and kind of on different uneven terrain, if you haven't cut your toenails back, those toenails your toes are pushing into the toe of your boots frequently. And if your toenails are kind of longer, what's going to happen is they're going to keep pressing in on your toe, especially that longer overhanging part, and you are going to get blisters on your toes where the toenails kind of push down. You're also going to get, those toenails are going to turn black and blue, and you're going to destroy your toenails, and it's just going to be very unpleasant. The other thing is long toenails are going to cut through your socks. They're going to damage some of your footwear. They're going to damage your feet as it rubs against other toes or pushing down, or maybe even become ingrown toenail eventually. I've had a situation where my shoes were kind of tight, my toenails were not cut back, and toenails just fell right off. And now that's not good, because the toenails are there for a reason. It kind of protects your toes from infection and whatnot and gives stability there. So cutting back your toenails to the right size for the distance that you're going. If you're going on a long trip, you may have to even bring toenail clippers if they grow fast enough back. So toenails are a thing to make sure that you take care of. A lot of people don't think of that, but it's very important to manage toenails. All right, so the next thing is to pre-tape your hot spots on your feet. So you just want to get some kind of Leuco tape and find a spot. It could be between your toes. If you tend to get blisters on a certain part of your toe, you'll want to wrap enough tape around that so that when these two rub, you're not going to have the skin get blistered. So maybe you'll tape this side as well, tape this side, so that when these two rub, the tape is taking the brunt of it as opposed to your skin and avoiding blisters. And of course, you'll do the same maybe on the back of your heel, which is a common spot right here. Some of you maybe at the bottom of your feet where the balls are, maybe on the bottom of some of your toes. A very convenient way to bring this sort of Leuco tape. I just wrap it around my trekking poles like this, and I have easy access to tape my feet when I need to. If for some reason the tape comes off, which it usually doesn't, it's very easy for me to just access the tape right from my trekking poles. It's not buried deep within my pack. And, I'll have duct tape, I'll have some medical tape. And if I do have medical tape, usually I will wrap it with duct tape just to protect it from the brush sort of pulling it apart, because duct tape's pretty resilient. So pre-taping your feet. We did have someone who came from Europe doing the Great Divide route, and he ended up getting blisters, and that kind of delayed his trip for about a week. So know where your hot spots are. Go out on some day hikes, some longer hikes. Find out where you're prone to get blisters. Pre-tape those areas, and that's definitely going to help. All right, so the next item we're going to cover is wearing multiple layers of socks. Generally, I wear 2 layers of socks. I've talked about this in some other videos about essential gear and whatnot. And for me, the first thing I usually put on, especially for a long hike, are toe socks. Put these on, and you'll see here, we talked about taping your feet, pre-taping if you get blisters. Well, even if you don't, by using toe socks, when your toes rub, you already have something protecting between the toes. And so I'll put on these, and yeah, it takes more work, and it's kind of annoying when you are doing water crossings if you have 2 pairs of socks on. But it's much more important to protect your feet than it is to worry about an extra 5 minutes of effort. So toe socks, that's 1 layer. I talked about before about having clean socks and whatnot. You can see I hiked with these the other day. It's got all this stuff on it. going to want to clean this off when you put them back on. I wasn't wearing gaiters for a hike in the backyard with these. You know, lots of dog hair and whatnot. Get all that debris off when you're going out on a hike. And put on that other pair of socks. So these are thin for summertime. These are Vital, whatever, Salvio. Got them from Amazon. They were pretty cheap. Usually I like to wear these in gin ginnies. I think these are a pretty popular name. These particular toe socks are thicker, and I usually wear these in the winter time. They get my feet pretty hot in the summer. So these ones are more thin. Of course, there's these other toe socks. I believe these are also in gin ginny. These ones are low cuts, and I know before, I think in another video I talked about not wearing low cut toe socks, but I think it's okay as long as you do have 2 pairs of socks. I know my daughter, when we went up Terry Fox Mountain a few years ago, she was only wearing toe socks like this, just up to here. And what happened then was, of course, you have your skin right above the top of where the low cut socks are, and you know, your boot and whatnot rubs there, and then you get really bad blisters around your ankle. So if you're going to wear low cut socks, make sure that you have 2 pairs. So you have these and another pair over top. Do not bring cotton socks. Do not use cotton, period, for anything when you're hiking. Don't use cotton unless you're going to use it as like a cloth to soak up water from your tent or something like that. Even then, it holds water for a long time. I would use something else. But do not wear cotton socks. Do not have like super thick socks, really, really thick socks. You know, you might be tempted to wear that in the winter, but you're just going to add a ton of pressure on your feet. You're going to sweat a lot more. You know, maybe have multiple layers of thinner socks to create that heat, so that those multiple layers, if I put, let's pretend these socks are good, and I put these over top of my toe socks, now this is going to rub against the toe sock instead of my skin rubbing, and I'm going to avoid blisters. So 2 pairs of socks are important. You don't want very thick socks. You don't want socks that have debris and dirt and whatnot. You want nice cleaned socks, 2 pairs of them. And I usually like to wear high cut socks. It just kind of protects my ankle up higher. But 2 pairs of socks. The other thing about this is when it's really wet, especially in wintertime, I like to put on these. I get packs of 20. These are like these plastic sort of bags. You can see after a while you do get these toe holes in them, especially on steeper terrain. It still kind of works. I just kind of fold it over and put it in my boot, and that will keep your feet a bit more dry, especially in the winter or in really, really wet summer conditions, but it does generate more heat. But I would rather be kind of like moist from my foot sweating than I would from being completely drenched from tons of snow or really wet outside. They come in like these rolls like this, packs of 20, and I'll bring, say, 2 pairs of that in my pack, and if I need them, if I know I'm going to need them, I'll put them on right away before the hike. Otherwise, I'll have them there so I can put them on. If my shoes get wet, they're probably going to stay wet for a long period of time unless I dry them off some way. I can put these on, change my pair of socks, and not be so wet, and that can avoid some level of blistering. So you have the plastic bags, 2 pairs of socks, wearing toe socks so that when you rub you don't get blisters. Don't wear socks that are like too thick. These are worn, of course. I don't wear these hiking. But again, these toe socks tend to get holes in them, especially in the heel, really easy. So you will go through these faster, but I'd rather these sacrifice all the rubbing than my skin getting blisters. So definitely a path to success. So yeah, 2 pairs of socks and synthetic materials, you know, like a smart wool or something like that, or even just, you know, nylon or something like that, but not cotton. Do not wear cotton socks. All right, so the next topic we're going to cover is, of course, and you know, took us quite a while to get here, but hiking shoes. Now, up until this point, everything we've talked about is relatively low cost, not very expensive to deal with. This area is one that you do not want to go cheap. You want to get the right kind of hiking shoes or boots that work for you, good quality boots. And it really comes down to what your goals are in terms of what you're trying to do in the backcountry. All right, kitty cat is very nosy. Anyways, so getting back to this, so you have sort of the idea of some lightweight shoes, right? Kind of like trail runners. These are just basic Skechers from Amazon. Use this for when I go jogging. You have stuff like that for trail running, all kinds of different shoes there, but you want to get good quality supportive shoes that are perfectly sized for you. You don't want to get a brand new pair of shoes and then go out hiking. You do not want to do that. So again, you have lightweight and then you have these more heavy duty kind of boots. So here's how it all started for me. I got some random pair of hiking boots years ago, made out of leather. They were okay, and they fell apart while I was on a large hike up Fang Mountain, and that's not good. And you end up getting blisters if the shoes aren't sized right, if you don't have the right kind of socks, if you don't take care of yourself, you're going to get in trouble. So I started off with these boots in 2020. These are the Solomon. I like the Solomon brand. These are, I think, the Ultras, Solomon Ultra GTX. Kind of lighter weight boot, but you can see the material here. You're walking a lot and it's very flexible, but it also breaks easily. And when you're wearing snowshoes, those straps oftentimes come across this part of the boot up here, and it's going to wear through cheaper material boots really easy, and you're going to get into this situation. So those are sort of lightweight and everything, but they're not so heavy duty. These are now the Ultra, or not Ultra, these are the GTX 4 hiking boots, kind of close to the top of the line of what they sell. And these are the kind of older style. These are not the Quest. The Quest do not have these heavy duty flaps here where the shoelace goes through. And the more of these leather eyelets that you have on your boot, the easier it's going to be for the shoelace to just break through, as you can see has done here. So you want these sort of heavy duty eyelets on your boots. That's kind of the thing you're looking for. That's why I like these Solomons. But I like a high cut boot for myself, but not everyone likes that, and it comes down to what you're trying to do. So you'd get a lightweight type of shoe that fits you well. It's not too wide, it's not too tight, doesn't allow too much movement. When you're going to do sort of trail running, and some people just like this for long distance. It doesn't support your ankles as much as something like this. I know this is a controversial topic, but for me, I absolutely believe that the higher cut protects my ankles better. I've hiked in low cuts and I've hiked in high cuts, and that's my opinion. But this is for one type of maybe a day hike, something like that. But if I'm going to go in some rocky, scree, boulder hopping and stuff like that, this supports my ankle. Plus, if I try to bend these, right? I'm not saying these don't wear, but they certainly don't bend as easy as the level down of these Solomon boots. These are much more beefy. The sole is much thicker. You want like a Vibram sole, because I have about 40 to 50 pounds of weight in my backpack oftentimes when going on hikes. If it's a day hike, maybe it's 30 pounds, I think is what I've kind of weighted out to. But on a multi-day, it's maybe 40, 45 pounds. And you want something that's going to support that weight, especially when you're on rocks and whatnot. So you want a heavy duty boot, which also kind of supports your ankles with all that weight. So that's kind of some things to think about in terms of low cuts versus high cuts. You want waterproof boots. You absolutely want waterproof, whether it's low cut or high cut. And that's another thing why I prefer high cut. You're going to get water in these shoes a lot easier. Even when you're wearing gaiters, if I step in water and that water level comes up to here, eventually it's going to get in here really easy. With these, it's going to take a lot more effort to get your feet wet when you have high cut boots. So that's just another thought in terms of water protection. Even when you're just walking through brush and the water from the vegetation is brushing against stuff, a bit more protection with the higher cut boots. You also want to make sure you have boots for winter versus summer. These boots I find are warm enough for both seasons. I have a whole video on these boots. I really like them. This is sort of a warranty of these ones since these started falling apart. As you can see, because of these got wet quite a bit and the leather started cracking and started pulling out. So I put in a warranty because these are warranted for 2 years. I believe all Solomon boots are warranted for 2 years. I went online, I made a claim, and I got a new pair of boots here. So the other thing is when your boots get wet, pull out those insoles, let them dry when you get to camp, and it'll dry faster inside of there. Plus you can squeeze the water out of these and it'll just improve the amount of time to dry. So you have high cuts, you have low cuts, the right kind of boots for the temperature. Would you want to hike in the snow with something like this where snow can much easily get in there when you're in deeper snow, right? Even with snowshoes, even with gaiters, over time, sometimes snow can make its way in. I find the high cuts work better, definitely in winter. They're gonna be hotter in the summer, right? So that's another thing to think of. So you probably want socks that are, again, thinner and whatnot in the summer because it's gonna get really hot. So it all works together, all these systems. I wear these up to minus 30 degrees Celsius in the winter. I do wear 2 pairs of socks and that keeps me warm as long as I'm moving. If I stop moving, you may need another pair of socks or get into your sleeping bag or whatever, but or make a fire, you know, different strategies. But again, these work fine for me. You will have to check what your comfort level is in terms of winter time. So high cut boots have prevented me from getting sprained ankles when I'm hopping on rocks, crossing over river crossings that have like boulders and uneven terrain. When I have a heavy pack, you need a boot that is supportive. Definitely with heavier multi-day trips, I find it's much more comfortable for me. It's not going to be the same for everyone, but you definitely want a waterproof boot that's Gore-Tex lined. So at least over time, it takes longer for that water to penetrate, so you're comfortable for longer. Maybe you're not even going to get wet depending on conditions, right? So a nice waterproof boot, a boot that's supportive for the type of activity you're doing, and the terrain that you're traveling in. If you're just on a regular day hike and you have a nice worn trail, right? Maybe these low cuts are going to be fine. If the trail's muddy, if there's lots of boulder hopping, if you have a heavy pack, if you're on a multi-day trip, you know, maybe you're going to want these. I wear the high cuts all the time. I find them very supportive for my feet. They are warmer. These boots get hotter inside than these lesser ones, but in the end, they stay drier for longer and they support my ankles and feet, and I've gotten used to them being warmer. I wear thinner socks. It works great for me. So let's talk a bit about some of these others. So what you definitely do not want to do, you don't want to bring your work boots. These are like wildland firefighting boots that I got when I was a volunteer firefighter, right? So they've got the Vibram sole so that, you know, nails and things don't poke through. Steel toe boots. These are extremely heavy, beefy, but very heavy. When these get wet, man, they stay wet for a long time. This material just soaks it all up in there. Yeah, I guess you can pull the soles out, which is good, but very different kind of design. Not really a hiking boot at all. I took these first time I went up Zigzag Ridge. They were terrible. We crossed a creek. They stayed wet for the rest of the day. There's nothing going to dry these out. You never, ever, ever want to hike in these gum boots. Never. You know, they have these drawstrings up top, which seem like a good idea to stop snow and debris from getting in. But as this tightens around your ankles and you're moving back and forth, these actually chafe your legs and create a lot of pain. So not a good idea. Plus, they're not sized well for your feet. You're kind of meant to move a lot more in there. You definitely don't want these. I mean, this is okay for a short 5-kilometer hike, probably going to be okay on flat terrain. Mountain climbing or anything like that, snowshoeing for any distance, forget it. You're going to get blisters. So once again, well-sized shoes, waterproof shoes, consider ankle supports, consider support for the weight you're carrying, consider how you're going to be able to dry them off, when they get wet, because eventually they will get wet. Trail running versus multi-day hikes. Don't just reuse other shoes that you think, hey, that's a good idea. They're rugged. Rugged and heavy is not necessarily good. These are a good balance between lightweight, supportive, water resistant, etc. And that's really what you want to look for. So again, these are Solomon's. There's lots of different brands. Try them out. Wear them for multiple days. Break those shoes in before you go on your first big hike, so that you don't get blisters, because these will somewhat mold to your feet inside. And if it's too small, you're going to get blisters. If it's too big, you're going to slide around, you're going to get blisters. No matter what strategies you use for the other things we talked about, get good shoes. Hopefully you guys get the message. All right, so the next item on the list we're going to talk about are Gaiters. That's what these are. And this is a topic where the cost of the Gaiters are relatively cheap, or at least, I mean, there are expensive Gaiters, but you don't need to buy expensive Gaiters. This is an area that is low cost, high impact. So these are just, brand name is Unigear, but it really doesn't matter the brand name so much. These are pretty close to the same in terms of quality. This brand, this is Outdoor Research, and this is Random Amazon brand. And both of these seem to last about the same. I think maybe the Amazon brand even has lasted longer. My other Gaiter from my other leg is actually ripped from the Outdoor Research. But they've lasted for years. And let's just talk about the principle of this. So let's put on a sock. What did I do wrong? If you were watching the sock section, these are those thick socks. Do not put thick socks on. Come on, pay attention. All right, so we're going to put on some nice regular thickness synthetic material socks. We don't have tons of dog hair or debris on them. Let's put on a boot. Yeah, I should have 2 layers of socks on, but for the sake of this illustration, we'll just do this up. I'm not going to really worry about shoelaces at this point. Let's just say I slap these together or whatever. Gaiters are now going to protect intrusion of water and debris into the boot. So of course, high cut boots are better than low cut boots in terms of more protection from sort of debris from the ground, but Gaiters are going to change the game. So let's just say I throw these on, and let's look at the components of the Gaiter. So this bottom part here goes on the bottom of your boot, and it kind of holds it in place from moving around. Usually Gaiters have a hook mechanism like this, which hook into your shoelaces. And then there's this Velcro section here, which wraps it around your foot. There's a side section here, which lets you adjust how much down the boot it goes. And then there's this section up here that cinches the top around the top of your calf. And basically you just put it in through here. You clamp that over and it just kind of cinches the top. Let's put it on and discuss how this works, so you'll see. So underneath your boot, okay, get that right on the bottom. Let's hook that on a shoelace right there. Let's get the bottom of our Velcro there, and Velcro over there. And so all of that is one formed unit, and then the top of our calf, let's hook that up and we'll cinch it up. And there we go. We have this Gaiter forming around our boot, and you can see how it's all hooked in. Turn my foot all the way around. And what this is going to do is, if I walk through swampy water, if I walk through brushy terrain, it's going to give me a higher tolerance for that water. So like it splashes, it hits here and it runs down. It doesn't get into the boot. This is a water resistant material. This is also great for wintertime when the snow kind of splashes up here. When you're snowshoeing or whatever, it just hits the Gaiter and goes down. It's going to keep you drier for longer. It's not completely waterproof. I call it water resistant. These hooks, you can hook them into the shoelace. One thing I will say about the hooks is to be careful, because oftentimes if you don't have strong shoelaces, over time they will wear out the shoelace and eventually snap the shoelace. And now what? What are you going to do, right, on a multi-day trip? So oftentimes I'm not hooking in the hooks, I'm just leaving it. And it seems to work fine for me because of this under shoe connector seems to be enough for me. And yeah, so what's the other thing we noticed? So it's going to protect you from water for longer. It's going to keep you drier for longer. It's going to protect you from lots of brush. Brushing against your leg, it's going to keep your bottom of your pants and the top of your boots cleaner for longer from mud and everything. It's the sacrificial layer. And the other thing is shoelaces. So just imagine if I were to throw this on, and this is a practical advantage of Gaiters. I throw this on, I tie up my shoelace real quick, and like you saw in the other one, I did it pretty sloppy. But imagine me going through the brush like this and stuff tugging away. I cross the water, the stream pulls on this. I go through the brush, it's pulling on this. Eventually this is going to come undone, and you're retying your shoelaces constantly. Essentially, I never ever have to retie my shoelaces when I wear Gaiters. Gaiters protect your shoelaces from getting tugged apart, especially in really rough country. So Gaiters are just fabulous. Keeps you warmer in the winter as well. Keeps you drier for longer, like I mentioned. And when you're in deeper snow, even if you're not wearing snowshoes, you have a higher tolerance before snow will penetrate. It will eventually get in here, given enough time. If you're up to your knees in snow, eventually you're going to get snow in there. But it's going to buy you more time. It's going to give you more heat, which means you're going to be warmer in the summer too. But Gaiters are an essential item to use to protect your feet. All right, guys, so what's the next item on the list? Next item on the list may surprise some of you. Trekking poles. This can be a controversial topic. A lot of people don't like trekking poles. A lot of famous hikers out there with YouTube channels don't use trekking poles. When I first started hiking, I hated the thought of using a trekking pole. But the truth is, this has become an essential item. This helps you balance. You have a heavy pack on your back. Even if it's just a day pack, you've got extra weight there. You're on steep slopes, rocky slopes, muddy slopes, grassy, slippery, whatever, mossy, anything that's that's just not flat run-of-the-mill trail running. These become pretty essential. It helps you stabilize yourself on that kind of terrain. Something that you can, like I've talked previously, you can wrap different medical tape, duct tape, that kind of thing around here, so you can carry first aid and other things just by wrapping it around the pole. You could get creative with that, and really just helps you balance. Gives you 2 more points to balance your body when you're crossing over water. Very important, very, very important. You're kind of leaning into the water, you're facing upstream, and you've got your trekking poles, and you're kind of balancing yourself, leaning forward, so as it pushes you back, you've got kind of 4 points, your 2 feet and your arms kind of balancing that weight and helping push your way across. Just helps you keep your feet from getting injured. Rolling an ankle, anything like that. So once again, for slippery slopes, steep slopes, when you're in the rocks, sometimes you lose your balance really easy. Rocks can get very slippery as well when you've had a little bit of rain, or even if there's a little bit of moss growing on there, or maybe just the slope is really steep. Just to have those extra points to help balance yourself. You start sliding and you can dig in. Now, one thing that I will say, especially when you're in rocks, is these tips are really easy to break, especially on carbon fiber poles. So if you anticipate going into rocky terrain, you may want to get stronger aluminum poles. They are heavier, but they will last longer and have less of a chance of snapping when you're in those rocks. But I just generally try not to put these tips in between large rocks. So if I'm bending like this, less chance that it'll snap. I try to kind of put it on top of the rock as sort of a balance point as much as I can. But trekking poles have become an essential part of my hiking experience. And in the winter, you have snow baskets that screw onto here. So they're about that round. So it just kind of helps balance on top of the snow as well. You can lean into it. And when you're especially going downhill, these can help going uphill, but these have become critical going downhill. When gravity really wants to pull you down, when it's really steep, muddy, wet, rocky, just 2 more points to stop you from really having a nasty fall. There's a reason why skiers, when they ski down, they have essentially trekking poles to keep themselves balanced as they go down. So same thing with wintertime, same thing with crossing water for multi-day trips or even just a regular day trip. Sometimes you have to cross the water. So trekking poles are pretty important. And just one last thing to mention, I like the cork handles, and that's because your fingers can get, I think I actually have some, I don't know if it'll show up on here, yeah. I have some blisters there. And just because of lots of rubbing, if you're going on really steep terrain for a long time, but these cork handles, much less chance of you getting blistered on your hands. I know we're talking about feet for this video, but just wanted to mention that since I talked about this pole for helping keep your feet from getting sprained and injured. The cork handles I find are really good. They don't absorb the sweat as much as you know, this material here. So it forms to your hand better and just stays nice and firm. So I really like that. The other thing is most of these come with hand straps. I always remove the straps. I hate the straps. They just get in the way for me. So I remove mine. So they are removable pretty much for every pair. Worst case, you could just get scissors and cut them off. But there is a way to just pull them out for these Costco brand Cascade Mountain. Really easy to do that. So let's move on to the next one. All right, guys. So the next item we're going to talk about is waterproof pants. You're like, are you going to mention every piece of gear as footwear? Well, this works as a system to help protect your feet. And what do I mean by that? Well, we talked about socks, we talked about high-cut boots, we talked about gaiters as a system to keep that foot dry, warm, and comfortable. But what is the weak link at that point? Well, the weak link would be, what if you're walking in brush, like wet brush, or if it's just raining, and your upper thighs are getting wet? Well, that water's going to kind of penetrate eventually whatever pants you're wearing, and it's going to run down your leg and get into your boot, and it's going to get your feet wet, etc. And the more that happens and the longer it happens, the more of a problem you're going to have. So what you need to do is get yourself some good waterproof pants rated for that kind of thing. These are the North Face. I wouldn't recommend that brand, but anyway, find yourself a good pair. I'm sure there's many reviews about that, and that's going to protect your upper thighs, especially when it's really wet out, whether it's the brush, whether it's raining out, that kind of thing. Now, one thing to consider when you do get waterproof pants is when you put a boot on, right? This is a pretty big piece of, this is a pretty big thing to fit through your tube, your pant leg, especially when you have a big boot like this. So you should get pants that have zippers down the side. These do have it, right? These have zippers down the side, and it Velcros here so that you can get your boot all the way down in there. You want to be able to throw these on without having to take your boots off. Quickly put them on, quickly take them off. You don't want to have to take your footwear off to do that. And so I have found that these pants, the zippers don't go high enough to make it easy to do. I can get my boots through, but it is quite the struggle. So make sure you try this in the store, try it in person. So I recommend you actually go to a store to get your rain pants for that, unless you know exactly the pair that's going to work for you. Put your boots on, maybe even put your gaiters on, and try putting them through. This is going to keep your feet nice and warm and dry. Rain pants. All right, so let's talk about some strategies to deal with some of these problems with protecting our feet. So first thing you want to do is when you get to camp or when you're going to have an extended break, like lunch or something like that, if at all possible, you know, take your boots off Let your feet air out. Take your socks off and just let them air out. Dry off your socks, put them out in the sun, take out the insoles, squeeze the water out, let the sun dry off your hiking boot and your socks. Airing out your socks, your shoes, your feet, especially your feet, is a really important part of keeping them resilient. You want to do that throughout the day, have a routine. Definitely when you get to camp, like I said, longer breaks when you're going to do that. You definitely want to take breaks and give your feet time to air out. Obviously, it's pretty tough to do that in the wintertime. So what you may want to do, especially if you're wet, dealing with snowshoeing or something like that, if it's really wet out or lots of snow has kind of penetrated, if you're stopping for camp at least, I would take those boots off, put on a nice dry pair of socks. Obviously, you can't just have your feet like that, but dry pair of socks. Your feet can't be bare, I mean. And bring some, in the summertime, you can wear water shoes. Or, for the winter, they have these sort of camp shoes. There's all different versions of this. These are, I think, Rabs. There's all kinds of like camp shoes. There's kind of like puffy, keep you warm. If I'm wearing socks, I can wear this. I can walk around in the snow, at least if it's not too deep, if it's already been packed down, sit around a fire and just kind of let my feet be dry or dry off a bit more. While everything else is there, I'll put my boots, my socks around a fire that's there. And if you have no fire, it's definitely going to be tougher. You'll have to do something like when you go to bed in your sleeping bag, you might have to put your sock under your shirt or something like that and use your body heat to dry things off as much as possible. So give yourself the opportunity to air out, to dry off. Take your shoes off as quickly as possible when you get to camp. Walk around in those water shoes during the summer, in these, get some camp shoes like this. And these are different from just your standard thing because they really pack up really small and tiny. There's 2 pairs in here, a little carrying bag, and because it compresses so small, it's pretty easy to bring, but very useful, especially for winter time. That's where I brought those. And of course, these are my water shoes. So that's the other part of this is take your shoes off when you're going to cross water. Put on these nice water shoes, kind of a sturdy type of sandal. And the bottom is not like your typical sandal. They're quite resilient. It's a thicker material, still flexible, but it's strong enough to protect you from the rocks. So when you're crossing over the water on boulders and sharp rocks and stuff like that, I have a whole video on water crossing, but get some nice sandals like this. You want a really snug system so as the water pushes on it, it's not going to come flying off, like your typical foamy sandals or something like that. I'm not necessarily quick to put my socks and shoes back on. I may just walk with these for a little bit to let my feet kind of dry off a bit more. If it's going to be muddy or wet vegetation, then I may not do that. I may put these on right away, but you'll have to deal with the conditions that you have. So, like I said, take the insoles out, let everything dry out. Bring water shoes, especially during the seasons where it makes sense. Allow your feet to dry, allow your boots to dry, allow your socks to dry. And that's just one set of strategies to kind of keep your feet resilient, letting them air out and dry off and whatnot. Another thing is, if we're going to talk about shoelaces, these are the shoelaces that came with my Solomons. And you'll notice they have kind of a little bit of flex to them when you cinch them up. And that's how the shoelaces are that come with these boots. Now, you might have heard of these shoelace types called iron wire. A lot of people get the iron wire shoelaces, and that's what you saw in my previous shoes that I had. They're very strong. It's almost impossible to break them. But okay, so talking about the iron wire shoelaces, that's what these are. And these really have no stretch to them at all. They're just really strong, but they don't have any flex to them. But you're not going to easily break these. So you'll see these are pretty tough on shoes because they don't have much stretch. They tend to break right through your sort of leather connections. And that's why earlier I talked about getting shoes with more of these eyelets, because these things last a long time. But leather connections like this, they just break really easy, especially when you use iron wire. So note that if you decide to replace the shoelaces that came with your boot with something like this, you may put wear on your boot much more earlier than normally would have happened. So when you put this on, there's different strategies of tying up shoelaces. And in the material that came with these Solomon boots, they want you to, you do these side eyelets, and then the mid, and then the top. They say, make sure you do the top. Well, you have to find out a strategy that works for your feet. I like doing just the middle one. If I do the top, I find that puts too much pressure on the top of this tongue, and I don't get the kind of movement that I want. So for me, I only do up to the middle. I don't do the top. And when I tie my shoelaces, I do, your typical crossover, and I do it again. Do at least 2, maybe 3. And what happens is when you cinch it down, it kind of is really stable, and it's a lot harder to come untied. See, if I let go of it, it still has that firm grip. And of course, you kind of finish it off with whatever. So my loops, I'll do the same thing with the loops. I'll kind of double it up, and definitely a lot harder for that package to come undone. So the way that you tie up your shoelaces, I'm not going to go through all the strategies. There's different ways of looping this through. Find out what works well with your feet. You might have wide feet. You might want more play on your ankle. You may want less play on your ankle. Different comfortable setup for each person. Okay, so that's shoelaces. And I did talk about when you put on gaiters, how they hook on to shoelaces, but it can rub through and break shoelaces. So I just wanted to mention that again. Okay, so the other thing is, depending on how you tie up your shoelaces, if you do them too tight, obviously that's going to cause blisters. So make sure that you do it enough so that it's snug, so your foot's not sliding all around, but you don't want to over cinch those shoelaces, because that's going to also create too much pressure on your foot and another cause of blisters. Now, another thing is when you put your snowshoes in the wintertime over top, make sure you don't cinch up those straps on your snowshoes too tight as well. Give yourself a little bit of play. Otherwise, it's going to wear out your shoes, but it's also going to be just another cause for blisters, especially on top here. So make sure you give yourself, make it tight, but not too tight with your snowshoe straps. That's a really important one. All right, so another thing about shoelaces, let's say it's minus 20 degrees Celsius or colder, and I'm taking my shoes off. I'm in my tent getting ready for bed. Let's say I take these shoes off, okay, like this. And let's say I just leave my boots like that, off I go to bed. These shoes are going to freeze like this, okay? In minus 20, minus 30, and good luck getting your feet into these boots in the morning. So these shoelaces are going to freeze exactly the way it is like this. And if you need to bend them and tie them, they're going to snap when it's that cold. When you go to bed, lay out your shoelaces as straight as possible. Open up the tongue on your shoes so that even if it freezes like this, you can still get your foot in there. You can still tie up the shoelaces without snapping them because they're in a weird shape. And by the way, the same principle applies for your jackets, your socks, things like that. So if something's going to freeze because you can't put everything in your sleeping bag, then make sure you have a strategy for that. To warm up your boot, a lot of people will get hot water in the morning in your water bottle, put that in the boot and let it kind of thaw out, or you could put around a morning fire, let it thaw out, but that's just another thing. Make sure you deal with shoelaces properly and with your tongue. Okay, so make sure that when you start feeling hot spots on your foot, let's say there's some rubbing here and it's starting to get blistery, not quite there, but you can start to feel some pain points on your feet somewhere. Stop and deal with it before it becomes a blister. I know that sounds obvious, but act quickly when you get hot spots. Begin Once they begin to form in your feet, stop, take everything off, tape that spot if you haven't already done it. If it's an area that doesn't usually happen because maybe you're in a certain kind of terrain or maybe your feet got more wet than you expected, clean up your foot, get some tape, put it on the affected areas, usually, you know, at the back of the heel, maybe on your toes, maybe on the balls of your feet. Tape it all up nice and good and dry things off. Put the package back together, your whole foot system, and deal with it before the blister becomes an issue. So act quickly before blisters form. If the blisters still are going to form, despite all the things we've talked about in this video, then a couple things you can do. Slow down your pace. You're just going to have to slow down. If you keep moving at the speed that you're moving at, you've already proven to yourself it's generating enough friction, enough heat, that blisters are just going to get worse. And maybe your other foot is going to get it. Maybe you're going to get more blisters, worse blisters. And if you can't walk, now it's going to be maybe an SOS call or something, or you're going to have to spend many days to recover. So at all costs, do your best to avoid that. Slow down your pace. Make sure you've taped yourself up. Clean your shoes, your feet, dry things off. Spend the time to do the maintenance so that you don't get into that position. But if you, like I said, if you do get it, tape yourself up, slow down your pace. When you do take those breaks, like at camp or a long lunch or something like that, take all your shoes off. Remember we said air it out. Soak your feet in nice cool water. Usually you're going to stop for a meal or camp near a water source anyway to get water, to filter. Put your feet in there, cool them off. It'll cool down the swelling. It'll constrict those blood vessels a bit more. It'll feel really good, but it'll also do wonders for your feet. Those hot spots will cool down nice and quickly, so soak your feet. It'll reduce the swelling. So rejuvenate your feet by doing all of that, giving them a break and whatnot. So just a couple other things. Snowshoes and micro spikes will put a lot of wear on your shoes, and crampons, because you've got straps going over here, and as you're moving a lot, anywhere you have rubbing happening, you know, there's potential. So just remember that the tighter things are, the more friction you create, it's going to wear things out. So again, micro spikes, you've got them over your boot. Don't just leave micro spikes on your boots all the time. It's going to eventually wear out your boots. Only put those things on when you need to. Take them off when you're done using them at the end of the day. Give your equipment a chance to have less friction with all that stuff. Otherwise, you're just going to wear out your shoes, and shoes are pretty important. Okay, what else do we have here? So as you can see with these boots, you'll see the more your boots are exposed to water, the higher chance you're going to get all this kind of cracking and separation. Because what happens is it gets wet, it swells, it dries, it shrinks. Swelling and shrinking, expanding, contracting. And eventually you're going to get all this kind of cracking and peeling. So try to minimize the amount of water crossing you do with these shoes. That's why I use the water shoes. It's going to give more life to these. These are going to last, your hiking boots are going to last longer. Again, these are expensive. Remember, this is a one piece of equipment we definitely do not want to go cheap on. So try not to get these as wet as much as possible. They will last longer. Talked about using water shoes when you cross water. A lot of thru hikers will say, I don't have the time, I'm just going to go with the shoes I have on. But if you want to take care of your feet, unless you've conditioned your feet to be able to go for 20, 30, 40 kilometers and just walk through creeks and whatnot, bring water shoes. Where they've been trained to be able to go through certain conditions, bring water shoes for water crossings. Use them, take the time to do it. And like I said, I have a video all about water crossing and strategies. You can look at that one. We've talked about wintertime, shoelaces and stuff like that. Dry off your gear around a fire, especially in winter, but also in summertime. Use that to dry off your stuff. Put it out in the wind if it's windy out, if it's not below freezing, then the wind will quickly dry everything off. Same with your gaiters, by the way. You don't want to have your gaiters all scrunched up and freeze that way. Lay them out nice and flat. It applies to all of your gear. All right, and sort of the last bonus item that we'll get into to finish off this video is relating to if you have a pet. Like I bring Adventure Dog on many of our hikes. And in the winter time, what I do is I get this product called Musher's Secret. And this product is kind of like a organic wax type material. And I put it on the bottom of her feet, and that stops all that icy ice crystals and snow from bunching up between the feet. And you know, they always have to chew on them because it's really annoying when you have freezing cold between those dog paws. So Musher's Secret, that's what a lot of people who have dog sleds and whatnot use that. And that's what I use for Adventure Dog. And it definitely helps her have less of a miserable time, especially when it's colder and really wet and snowy out. Helps her enjoy her time. She loves the winter time. So anyways, that's the bonus item. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Maybe you learned a few things. Maybe you have some of your own strategies. You can put those down in the comments, and we'll catch you on the next one.
When the road just keeps going for miles, we're gonna get there. In the face of the wind and the wild, we're gonna get there. Love makes the journey a beautiful race. We're closer to home with each step that we take. We're gonna get there. Take my hand. Together we'll make it. Together we can. To the end. Together we'll make it. So come take my hand. Take a deep breath and rest for a while. We're gonna get there. Try to let yourself hope like a child. We're gonna get there. We can reach out on the uncertainty. We can look up, fix our eyes on a dream. We're gonna get